So, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Agenda item 1, apologies for absence and declaration of substitute members. I think we're all here.
Full house, yeah.
Yep. Item 2, disclosure of interest. To deal with any disclosure by members of any disclosable pecuniary interests and interests other than pecuniary interests, as defined under the Seaford Town Council Code of Conduct and Localism Act of 2011 in relation to matters on the agenda. Is there anyone? Councillor Meek.
Number 5 Sherwood Road is kind of pretty much opposite my house. I didn't know about this application, and quite honestly, I've got no objection to it, so I don't think there's any kind of conflict here, but just to let you know.
Is it at the rear?
The extensions at the rear of the property, I wouldn't see it actually. So
No,
it doesn't affect me at all, in fact. So
yeah, I think you can ignore that then and take part and vote as you wish. I think. Because,
okay, thank you.
You don't know the person there, then, other than.
Well, I have talked to them, but yeah. I don't know them personally. I've only kind of said hello to them a couple of times.
Oh, that's fine.
But you haven't got a pecuniary interest, anyway.
No.
So just minute it that you did declare, that you are a neighbour, and then that should be fine. Okay, no public participation, so we move on to agenda item 4, planning applications received a week commencing the 14th of September, and that's LW/20/0592 89 Stafford Road. There's a single-storey extension, front entrance, porch and summer house in the rear garden.
Mm-hmm.
Who would like to lead on this application? Councillor Honeyman.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this particular one, I can't see any problem with it. I know it's quite steep at the back, and it does go on to where there's a couple of objections. I suppose without actually visiting the property, you can't necessarily appreciate it, but I can't see any problem myself. Thank you for that.
Councillor Borman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was looking at some of the objections. They were talking about the size of the extension and the size of the summer house actually taking up a large proportion of the garden, but there's no measurements on the length of the garden, I noticed. So although you've got the measurements of the extension and the summer house, there's no measurements of the gardens. So I'm not sure whether it does take up, it's 50%, isn't it?
Well, yeah, 50% is the permitted development rule. It's not a policy rule. If you apply for permission, you're allowed to, in theory, cover 100%. It's just that you can develop up to 50% without specific consent. I think this is at the rear of the garden, so so it's quite substantial, but it's sort of not tucked away, but it's in the best possible position, right at the back. I wasn't sure about how it was seen from the back. You can't really see that on any of the computer sites that you can look at. But yeah, there's no rule about coverage of the garden other than for permitted development. No. That's a question of discretion, really. There's this question of light that's been highlighted. The light to the bedroom. Members have seen that as well, have they?
Yeah, I mean, on the block plan, there seems to be, sort of plenty of room. That's the only thing we've got really to go by. Councillor Edson.
Yeah, I noticed on the Google Earth that there are other similar structures in size in other gardens adjacent. Am I right in thinking that we've seen this application before? No?
No.
It just seems familiar to me. And I was just wondering if we could make one of the provisions that the building in the garden should not be used for commercial purposes.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's a good idea because it is big enough for other uses. Yeah.
And not to be occupied, I suppose. I mean, apart
Well, yeah.
from using it for pleasure purposes.
Used as ancillary to the main dwelling.
Yeah. Because if they do use it as a business outlet, then it would need another planning application, and that would be discussed separately.
So,
Councillor Edson?
so how do you feel about this this letter we've received with regard to the ancient light? And according to the letter, the applicant said her original intention was to have a conventional all glass conservatory, and the architect suggested a solid cavity wall. I mean, I don't know whether that's relevant or
It's interesting. Yeah, I'm aware of this 45-degree rule. It means that, you know, if you draw a line up from the center of the window up 45, or from the center of the extension up 45 degrees, then that line shouldn't have any interruption, if you like. But usually it only it has its maximum effect when the loss of light, any loss of light, is from a principal room of the neighboring property, and principal rooms usually defined as a living room or kitchen diner where the person, the occupant, would spend you know, a significant part of the day. It doesn't usually relate to a bedroom, but then again, a bedroom can become a principal room. It depends on the circumstances. So that rule, as I say, usually only refers to any loss of light from a main room. But having said that, the applicant apparently said herself that she did intend it to be glazed rather than a solid wall. So if members are concerned about that, then, you know, then they can always suggest that it would be better if it went back to its original intended proposal of what does she say? All glass conservatory, rather than having a solid cavity wall. So, you know, it's up to members to decide whether they think that's significant enough to mention as a concern.
Councillor Mead?
I think Jeff's right. I mean, I would go with that and suggest that I think we ought to respect the neighbours' concerns, and the fact that they seem to be friendly with is it Miss Lee? I think if she's prepared to have an all glass construction, that will appease the neighbour and I think solve the problem. So I would suggest that we vote to not have the solid wall, but suggest that it should be back to its original suggestion.
Yeah. Councillor Argent?
Yes, I was thinking if they have a glass down the side, is it possible that people, say half a dozen or a dozen people sitting in the conservatory, can look in through the bedroom window?
It would be frosted or obscure glass, I would have thought, at the side.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would have to put that.
Obscure glazed.
That's right. Yeah,
I'm sure she would have done that anyway.
Yeah.
Councillor Honeyman?
Thanks for letting me come back, Chair. Yes, I mean, when you think of those rear bedrooms on the back of Pontiside Court, you know, where the objections are coming from, in a sense, they would be looking at a very sharp assessment, wouldn't they, anyway, just because of the nature of that particular road and where Stafford Road backs onto it. So, in that respect, it's I think what you just said, it would make a good idea, and I think it would please both the applicant and the neighbour as well. So,
yeah.
Do you want to frame it? Sorry.
I was going to say, because I have a proposal on
Yeah.
Yeah, Councillor Edson.
Yeah, I mean, how do councillors feel about not to be used for commercial use in relation to our other
Yes, I think we
business
need
committee?
to mention that as well. That has been a concern on one of the objectors, I think.
Hmm.
Right, so can I have a proposal on, I don't know, did you, Councillor Honeyman, start off with a proposal?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with the other two bits. You know, the extension and the front porch and all that side of things. It's just to say that the summer house is the more the contention bit, isn't it? In that sense.
Yeah.
So with those sort of conditions we mentioned, and I'm happy with that. Yeah, no business and with the window, with those. Yeah. Thank you.
Do we put this as we're supporting this application in principle, except for the sunroom, where we feel it should be fully glazed?
Yeah,
And
I think, yeah. Yes, it's sort of halfway between an objection and support, really, in a way. But we don't. Yeah, I think to, general support to the principle, but concern over the question of the cavity wall, which the committee thinks should be a glazed structure to preserve the amenities of the neighbour.
With obscured glass.
Yeah, and if consent is to be granted, there should be a condition relating to the use of the summer house.
Yeah.
So something along those lines.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Is that all right, Councillor Hanman?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you, Chair.
And who would like to second that?
I do.
I think Councillor Argent was first. Anybody else want to speak on it, or shall we take it to the vote? Right, we'll take it to the vote of supporting this application on principle with the conditions we've mentioned. Okay, and have a show of hands, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's unanimous.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
LW/20/0575 75 Sutton Avenue, 2-storey front extensions and first floor fronting extension. Who would like to lead on this one? Councillor Honeyman.
Thank you again, Chair. Yes, so it's a substantial property, and even though you could argue it goes a bit close to the boundary, but I'd be quite happy to support it.
Does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Foreman. Anybody else like to speak? Okay, so can I have a show of hands of supporting this application, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's carried.
Thank you.
Unanimous. Thank you.
LW/20/0593/CD, land south and west of the East Sussex County Council, Port Access Roads, Southern Roundabout, and it is discharge conditions of various sources.
As I mentioned, I mentioned in the note on the agenda, we're not usually consulted on applications to discharge conditions because it's pretty much an administrative exercise, not involving much discretion, more of a tick box thing. But we were formally consulted on this. The case officer was aware that we'd been interested in the original application and I think objected to it last year. And so we were consulted again, as I say, out of courtesy, because we'd commented on the first application, the main application. But I don't think there's a lot we can say about this really, other than, I mean, it's, as I said in the notes, it's more for information because it's quite a major feature which members are interested in. But as far as exercising discretion over the details, I think it's, as I say, it's more of a tick box admin exercise rather than a pucker planning application. But members may still have their views on it, but as I say, that's how it's presented.
Does anybody want to comment? Councillor Honeyman.
Yes, so the lighting it's going, it might be an interesting one. I mean, I assume obviously it's got the latest up to date side to hide too much of the lighting from the Seaford direction. But apart from that, you are right, it's more of a tick box exercise. I think the significant thing will be if it's going to be double yellow on it, those sort of aspects. But that doesn't come under this, does it? Those sort of no waiting.
No.
That's for another time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I will say on the lighting, I mean, I have noticed over the months, probably, time, that Newhaven is not so brightly lit these days because I get the full view of it from where I live, and because of the lights shining down now rather than around, there is a significant difference to how it used to look. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so anybody else like to comment on this? Councillor Edson.
Yeah, can I just say that I was a member of the liaison committee where the company was obviously aware of people's attitude towards this road and that, and they did come up with a really good presentation of how they would landscape it, how they would protect the environment for the nature reserve and things like that, and the kind of plants, that they're putting there, etc. So, they really did convince us that they was giving it a good go anyway. So, I was pleased with what I heard, and a lot of the others did too.
Right.
So, can I have a proposal that we support this application? Councillor Edson. And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Borman. And can I have a show of hands of supporting?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7.
Thank you.
Carried.
LW/20/0617, 11 Crown Hill, single story side extension. Who would like to lead on this one? Councillor Meek.
I have no objection to this. It seems pretty innocuous to me. I don't think there's any problem with it myself, so I would support it.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Edson. Any other comments? So take it to the vote on supporting this application.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's unanimous.
Thank you. LW/20/0569, 49 Tudor Close. Proposed front extension and clear glazing to windows installed in proposed dormers. I'm going to lead on this one. Councillor Edson, I think first, and followed by Councillor Meek, and then Councillor Borman.
Yeah, we have another letter with regard to this application, and it's from a chap who is a retired building consultant. So it seems as though he's got some ideas on it. There is no objection to the scheme in principle, but he wishes to draw your attention to the fact the dormers are merely an extension to the roof, etc. I expect you've all read that one. So I don't know how that fits in with the plan.
Yeah, I think traditional dormers would be more in line with the design guide, as he says himself. It's more in line with the character of the surrounding area than the proposals put forward. Just a question of whether it's whether members consider it strong enough for an objection, you know, on those grounds. But it's definitely slightly unusual, and that the traditional dormers which the objector suggests, the neighbour suggests, would be more in keeping.
Councillor Meek.
Sorry, I was just going to basically echo what Councillor Edison had said. I think we ought to respect the advice and the concerns of the neighbour, and I would propose that we suggest that traditional dormers should be installed, not what has been put forward in the planning application.
Thank you. Councillor Borman.
Yeah, thank you. If you go down Tudor Close, all the houses have gradually are putting in dormers. They're all slightly different. They're different styles and things. So actually, it is in keeping with the area, even though one person doesn't quite like them. I do appreciate that. But if you go down Tudor Close, those that have put dormer windows on, they're all completely different. So I am happy to actually support the application.
Right. Okay. Anybody else like to comment? We got the first proposal from Councillor Meek saying that we object to the extension and would like to see more traditional dormer windows. Is that right, Councillor Meek?
I don't object to the planning application. I just think we ought to perhaps respect the one objection that's been put in. That's all I was saying. I don't live next door to it, so I think we have to respect what people. If no one else objects, well, maybe you say, well, there's only one objection, and as Councillor Borman says, if all the other ones are kind of disparate anyway, maybe it doesn't matter. But I was just thinking, you need to respect anybody who objects. You need to respect at least that they made an objection. They obviously have a serious concern about it.
Yeah, you could always I suggest. I mean, I take Councillor Borman's point. She detailed knowledge of the area. She says that a wide variety of treatments of dormers. You could say as a committee that you have concerns that the use of traditional dormers as suggested by the neighbour would be an improvement, but you don't think there's anything significantly wrong with what's been put forward because of the mixed character of the roof treatments and dormers in the area, or something like that. Because it sounds as if, from what Councillor Borman says about the houses around, that it will be difficult to sustain an objection. But you can, in fairness to the neighbour, you can make his point, but not actually object. I don't know how members feel about that. But
you feel about that, Councillor Meek?
I think that's a very good compromise, Jeff. That sounds.
Yeah. I'll be able to, come up with some wording that that covers that. I'm sure.
So it's really supporting the application in principle again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Borman. Councillor Honeyman, you want to come in?
Yeah, just echo really what Councillor Borman said and Councillor Meek in a way. I mean, that particular street, it does have a bit of a mix of those sort of dormer extensions from the roof. And I suppose this particular one is a bit more, to be fair, it is a bit more substantial maybe compared to the others. It will look more modern looking if that particular design still goes through as it stands. But I don't think it's enough there to object totally. So I'm happy with the compromise.
Okay, thank you. So put it to the vote. So can I have a show of hands of supporting this application in principle?
1, 2, 3, 4. That's unanimous.
Thank you. LW/20/0618, 40 Cookmere Road, proposed side and rear extension. Any Councillor Boreman?
Yeah, thank you. I don't see anything wrong with the plans on this one. The site can take it, and it actually makes the property, I think, more attractive in that area. So I propose that we support the application.
Thank you. Does I find a seconder? Councillor Meek?
Yes, I would second that.
Thank you. Any other comments? And
I agree.
Councillor
I
Hunt?
agree. Also.
Just regarding, I think even though they're substantial, I was quite surprised they're taking away the garage. I can't see them. That doesn't seem to be put anywhere else. But it's obviously it's their choice. But I mean, it's a big enough site. You could argue to keep a garage, but they are taking it away. Thank you.
Thank you. So can I have a show of hands of supporting this application, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's unanimous.
Thank you. Planning applications received in the week commencing the 21st September. LW/20/0605, 15 Albany Road. Creation of porch at front of property. I'd like to lead on this. Councillor Edson?
Yes, Chair, I think this is just a straightforward one. I can't see anything that's outstanding on it.
No. It's sort of like an infill, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So are you proposing to support the application? Does that find a seconder? Councillor. And any other comments? Councillor Sargent?
No, I'm going to second it.
Can I have a show of hands of supporting this application, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
LW/20/0635, 5 Sherwood Road, single story rear extension.
Go for it.
Councillor Boreman?
Yeah, this is a rear extension, and I don't see that it imposes on anybody, so I think we should support the application.
And does that find a seconder? Councillor Edson, any other comments? No. So can we have a show of hands of supporting the application?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Unanimous.
Thank you. LW/20/0387, 127 North Way. Alterations to approved plans of LW/19/0607 for the amendment to windows/doors for increase in the height of the extension, to extend the balcony, and various other amendments.
Councillor Walraven.
Councillor Lord?
Yes. I've been down to the property and had a look at it with regards to the neighbours at 125. The extension is probably bigger than my house, which is a 4-bedroom detached house. It is massive. And I don't say that without any prejudice, because I'm a surveyor. It is absolutely massive. Whatever they submitted in the first place is completely different to what they got now. They've got a rear extension, I would say, the full width of the property at about 6 meters out. They've also got what they're saying is a flat roof, which is going to be a balcony, which is 6 meters out, which should have had basically windows in it. Have now got patio doors, so they're making the rear extension. Oh, it's massive, absolutely massive. I've never seen an extension as big as this in my life. They've also raised the height of the roof as well. Well done them. They've also put in, which we're always complaining about, it's a window, a side window, which is less than a meter away from the boundary wall. It is the biggest extension I've ever seen in Seaford in my life, and that's what I'm going to say. Thank you. But I will. And I've been with the neighbours. They're really stressed out about it because they've completely and utterly lost their privacy, because the balcony overlooks the garden, the window from the kitchen, I suppose kitchen, overlooks the garden. I am very annoyed that people are allowed to do this. But I've not made my mind up, but I must say, the neighbours at 125 are extremely stressed about it. And I understand that Jeff has actually had a look at it from the rear of a Twitton, as we call them, Girls up north. It is massive. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just to fill in a bit of the history.
Okay.
It was a complaint that came to me during the lockdown when the Lewis officers were having to comply with certain procedures and not make any site visits. I realised that it would be visible from the alleyway at the back, and so I think it was around about May, June, when the works were going on. I had a look, and it did seem, very substantial, because as I say, the work seemed to begin just as the lockdown came in, which meant that although letters were sent by enforcement, they couldn't actually take the level of action that they would normally have taken and gone and have a visit and everything like that. Well, in fact, I think it took a long time before any letters went, because they weren't allowed to make any site visits. So that's the background to it. As the applicant was warned a number of times that he shouldn't carry on work until it was checked, but carried on and also finished the scheme. So, and also I'd ask members to note that the letters of support that the applicant has obviously, it has been put on the website. There's about 5 or 6 letters of support. Only one is from a resident in North Way. The others, you can't put a lot of significance on them, because although people say that they jog past the house every day or walk past the house every day, in fact the major changes are to the rear of the property. I'm sure they don't go through the alleyway at the back. They're talking about North Way. So not a lot of weight can be put on the letters of support. They may be just friends of the applicant, understandably wanting to give him some support. But the letters of objection from either side are quite significant. It's also true to say that when the application was granted back in the autumn, both properties, the properties either side were unoccupied. The main complainant from number 125 only moved to the property in January or February, and found out about this application later on when she checked the records, when her neighbour started building. So that's sort of relevant background as well.
Okay, thank you. I think I've got Councillor Meek first. Did I see your hand up, Councillor Meek?
Yes,
and then Councillor Everton. Thank you.
I just want to say, I think the lady at 125, I think she says in her submission that they've gone ahead and built without planning permission for what they're actually doing. So this contravenes any sanction from the outset for the planning. I just thought I'd put that in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Everton?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we often talk here about what's in keeping with the surrounding area, and you know, are things in keeping with the town, in keeping with the nature. We don't often allow someone to build essentially another house onto the back of their house and say, oh yeah, that's fine. That's not in keeping of what we let people do in Seaford, or what people usually ask to do. It is essentially another house being built onto the back of this one, and it's not something that I'm a fan of allowing people to do, because then it becomes hard for that not to be something. There's a lot of people in Seaford who have actually quite large rear gardens, and it's not a trend we want to start allowing to happen.
Thank you.
Just to mention the tree house as well, which mentioned by the applicant and in the application, but there's no detail in the actual documents as to where which tree is going to be turned into a tree house. But I think you can assume that any form of tree house in the garden is not going to preserve the privacy of the neighbours. Let's say as to how it affects the privacy of neighbours and to what level, we don't really know, because we haven't got details, but it's unlikely to be an improvement.
I mean, really, we can't comment on that because we haven't got any details.
I just comment that there's no concern that there's no detail.
Councillor Ford, are you coming back on this?
Yes, I'm Councillor Walraven. The treehouse, as I understand it, which has been identified to the residents of 125, is actually a very large brick shed at the bottom of the garden. That's what she has been told by this particular resident at 127. So I just thought I'd mention that. Thank you. It's not a treehouse; it's a very large shed. Thank you.
So if I go back to you, Councillor Lord, you propose that we object to this application, right?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do, Councillor Walraven. It's making a mockery of our planning system, and I have to say, people who have signed the proposals for it, Councillor, basically people under voting age, the 16, 17-year-old people. Thank you.
Yeah. What I want to clarify.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Everton.
Sorry.
What I want to clarify is what we're objecting on as a committee. So what I've written down from what you've said is overdevelopment, unneighbourly, it's visible from the Twitten, loss of privacy. Does anybody else want to sort of put more onto those objections?
Not in keeping with the area.
Yeah, out of character. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
No
Can
I just come back on when we looked at it last year in August 2019, and we supported it.
Yeah.
With various conditions. Now that's not going to make any difference today. I mean, the diagrams they look quite innocent from 2019, and maybe in that sense they don't look as though they're taken up as much as they did.
It was a very shallow balcony, and the balcony's been extended right out.
So it's bigger than what we're seeing. Is it basically been extended more compared to what was originally shown? Right.
I think there's any number of panels in the current balcony, as opposed to about 3 at the side of the original one. So it's coming right out. It's really extended over the whole of the rear extension. Right. Yeah.
Because when it was agreed on what was before us on the previous application, we stressed about the side panels to be obscured glass.
We do. That's right.
Which the officers picked up on, so it was acceptable. But this is, obviously
The
quite
balcony
an
space.
enlargement on that application.
I've got the letter in front of me from the neighbour, and it's in quite a lot of detail. I'm sure she's gone into it carefully. The balcony space has been extended from the approved 30 square metres to 84 square metres. So it's enough room to have a party on, as opposed to just use as an ordinary balcony, really, which is maybe the intention. I don't know.
Obviously, the view from it is a wider view to the original balcony. So, which is the loss of privacy. So, right, I've got a proposer and seconder that we object to this application. Can I have a show of hands, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's unanimous in objection. On those, I've got the headings of the objection quite clear. So that's but it should also include no detail on the tree house as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Tree Works application. TW/2078/TCA 25 Pansley Close. We've got a T1 mulberry tree to reduce top height by 1.5 metres and reshape lateral growth to match. Reasons due to tree falling over last year and now has stabilised and can be reduced to a more manageable size. T2 Acer 1 metre down and reshape, and the T3 conifer cut to boundary, reasons due to maintaining compact size of trees. Who would like to? Councillor Meek.
I think we should support this application. In a way, this is just tree surgery. It's maintaining trees, and if trees are falling over and things, you have to maintain them. Mulberry trees are renowned for falling over and being a bit of a pain. So it seems to me that it's reasonable, and it's actually tree care, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's pretty minor.
Does that find a seconder? Councillor Borman. And if there's no other comments, can I have a show of hands of supporting this application?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's unanimous support.
Thank you. Move on to planning. Agenda item 5, planning for the future.
Right. There's been quite a lot of publicity recently. I mean, since I wrote the report, there's been some national news and some local developments as well. I mean, Councillor Borman has sent us Lewis's presentation. I've had to read of the South Downs response to the white paper, which is going to their committee. Actually, it went to their committee today. So they have a daytime meeting today. So I've read that, which is quite interesting. I was going to suggest that it'd be easier to list the main subject headings and take those one at a time and get members' views on those particular subjects, because otherwise we'll be going from one thing to another. And so I've suggested splitting it into around about 7 or 8 different topics, because it's quite a wide range. It's quite a detailed white paper. Firstly, there's the new allocated areas or zones, the growth, the restricted and the protected and restricted zones, which sort of point towards, which will be decided on in the local plan. So they point towards sort of centralisation of the planning system rather than the local policy system that we've got at the moment. Secondly, the local plan, the new speeded up local plan procedure. Thirdly, the public involvement in planning, the digitalisation, and the the criticism it's made about the old-fashioned way in which notice is given of planning applications. Fourthly, the procedure on applications where they're suggesting fining, if you like, local authorities and allowing applications which are where the deadline has been broken. I think infrastructure payments under the new system, neighbourhood plans, and affordable housing. It's quite a substantial list, but it's quite a substantial white paper. So if members are agreeable, you know, it'd be best to cover each of those areas individually. Otherwise, there's going to be quite a bit of overlap between in the discussions. So if the chairman's happy with that, then the first topic is really the suggestion of zoning areas in local plans where there'll be sort of virtually automatic consent given, and sort of allocating areas of growth, areas of protection, and areas of restriction. I would say, which points to sort of centralisation of the planning system.
Are all members happy to deal with it as Jeff suggests? Yep. I'm getting nods from everyone, so yeah, okay. Okay, so anybody want to lead on this or have any comments? Councillor Meek.
Jeff has just disappeared, but maybe he can hear me.
I'm just plugging in my laptop.
Okay.
Sorry. Just plugging it in.
One thing I don't quite understand to do with this, Jeff, is if they're centralising the idea of zoning, does that mean they're disregarding neighbourhood plans, which have already identified where the housing is going to go, and they're going to override that, or do they respect what has been decided in the neighbourhood plan?
Well, it seems that under the new system, which won't come in for a few years anyway, all the allocations will be in the local plan, decided on centrally, if you like, and rather than allocations, there'll be a housing, well, there'll be an allocation of X hundred or X thousand houses for each district and split up into different areas with potential land for development, as I say, allocated as, you know, if land is allocated as a growth area, there's an automatic assumption that that residential development can go there. There's an automatic assumption that consent's granted. There's the protected area, the restricted area in the middle, I think, and then there's the protected area. So the important decisions on allocations and consent will be made solely through the local plan by the. But I mean, there'll be public input to the local plan, but it's solely an administrative decision by the inspector dealing with the local plan. And once that local plan is approved and adopted, that's it. Then the only public input will be for the design and layout of a scheme which, because of the local plan, would get, if it's in a growth area, will get consent in principle. So, and neighbourhood plans are got as a separate topic, but it does really take away the whole purpose of neighbourhood plans in involving the community in allocating sites at the ground floor, if you like. I mean, we've seen how the neighbourhood plan that we've just had adopted is dealt with by Lewis. Lewis accepted the allocations as part of their local plan. That's the way the neighbourhood plan works, with the system it goes through. The neighbourhood plan also gives the parish an increase in infrastructure payments. And when we get on to talk about that, there's no certainty that that will apply. So that the neighbourhood plan really is reduced to not much more than a design guide, it seems. You know, the power of allocation is taken away by this sort of centralisation of the local plan in order to speed up residential development. That's as I see it. I mean,
it loses its value, doesn't it?
Yeah, Councillor Borman's had a presentation from Lewis. I mean, I don't know how it was presented there, but that's the way I see it. It's a bit of a centralisation in order to speed up residential development, because the government's main concern is that it just takes too long for housing targets and residential development to be dealt with by local authorities. So the government thinks something drastic needs to happen to speed things up.
I mean, at this meeting I had this afternoon with SALT, talking, you know, trying to make sense of this white paper. I mean, that was one of the things what came through about, you know, these neighbourhood plans have, you know, have lost their value to what, you know, they would be at the moment. Councillor Honeyman.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, if the planning inspector are going to start, you know, start it from that way, from the centralised, doing it that way around, and then not going so much down to the local authorities. So, you know, the planning authorities then, like us, like consultees, would they always have to have a starting point for somewhere. So they would probably start by using the existing local plans, and then it would be more in their control as opposed to the local authorities. Is that how I see it?
Well, they're going to use some algorithm to sort of establish allocations and then work from there, really. And it's going to be national figures on the allocations, depending on, well, I don't know what it depends on, but it's going to feed into some sort of computer algorithm, which is going to
not an algorithm. Why don't we all just have lobotomies and let algorithms run the world? I mean, honestly.
It's the word of the moment. Yeah, algorithm.
Sorry.
I don't know what it means.
Councillor Borman.
Yeah, thank you. When Lewis was talking to us, they were saying about the neighbourhood plans would still be there. They're going to be their basis for their local plan, which they will have to relook at. Part of the reason the government's bringing this in is because a lot of the country haven't got local plans. So this is why they're trying to make it universal across the whole country. So the neighbourhood plan that we've got at the moment would be a starting point for Lewis's local plan, and then we all would, and the residents would input into the local plan to devise that, the design codes and things. Yes, the allocations, it could be an algorithm, yes. I have heard that the southeast possibly will have a lot more housing that is required, rather than it being in the north, because supposedly this is where the work is, this is where everything is, and we need more housing. But yes, we'll cross that bridge when we come to that one.
Councillor Meek, did you want to come back?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I don't support this, because it seems to be diametrically opposed to the Localism Act that was brought in about 10 years ago, where the idea of government was to devolve those kind of decisions to local government. And it seems to me that what's going to happen is that that's going to be taken away from local people, and it's going to be overseen by a more centralised initiative, which actually doesn't really take into consideration concerns locally and people who live in the area, who know the area well, you know. So that's why I would object to it.
Yeah, I think Newlands is a good example how we, you know, both at town level and district level, how negotiations with the developers, you know, we had a good input on it. You know, none of us like change, but we knew that it had to be developed, and it was getting it right, and without local knowledge you wouldn't get it right.
That's right.
My opinion.
There's also sorry.
I was like, Councillor Honeyman, and then
Yes, as Councillor Bourne was saying, I mean, in a lot of ways, you could argue that obviously, yes, neighbourhood plans don't exist in the major conurbations in England, and because the government structure is completely different. So you could argue that this is in a lot of ways is more applicable to those sort of areas as opposed to where we live down here. But I'm thinking more of the Seaford side as opposed to the general. We're thinking more of Seaford here, aren't we? Really, in mind.
Councillor Edson.
Yeah, I was just looking at this abolition of the seal payment. And you know, there's been a high-profile case in Horsham where someone has wanted to develop an area, and also the one in Tower Hamlets where that was much publicised about, you know, not wanting to pay the seal levy to Tower Hamlets Council. And I just wondered if, it seems so centralised. I don't think that we've got too much to worry about in these parts. Unless, of course, they can steamroller over the South Downs National Park and places like that. You know, there are areas on the fringes of Seaford where, you know, someone might have an eye on developing.
They're gonna retain protection for the national park. That's been made quite clear.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm reading the South Downs response. You know, they're happy that their land's going to be, you know, well protected, but there are other points. Yeah. On the local plans, the concern is that the way the programme for local plan is drawn up over a quite short period of 30 months is that the main public input, there's two stages of public input. The concern is that it comes too early when there's nothing really to comment on. And the second one is that the second stage of public input comes too late to influence the what's in the local plan and the allocations. And the concern is that the main public input should be in the middle of those two suggested stages that there are at the moment in the proposals. So, but it's very difficult because there's a general lack of detail in the white paper. It covers such a wide area that there's inevitably going to be a lack of details, you know, so it is difficult to actually put forward clear comments. It is really just the principles of it, and to say moving away from localism is one of the points that you could make. You know, the neighbourhood plans are the sort of flagship of localism, brought in by the Localism Act, and yet, you know, the new proposals move away significantly from that by leaving allocations to the local plan process, the planning inspectorate, although the public will still have an input. But that's one of the points I think you could make if you want to. And another thing is publicity. Going on to digitalisation, there's a lot of emphasis on digitalisation, standardising the templates for plans and making them all digital in the same form so that it's easy to compare one area to another. And there's a lot of, in a way, Mickey taking in the white paper about how the planning system seems still to rely for publicity for planning applications on notices on lampposts. Well, you know, a lot of people will still, you know, will want to rely on notices of lampposts, because that is the way that word gets around. Not everyone is IT savvy. Not everyone has will have the equipment necessary to plug into the planning system if it's fully digitalized. And that, as I say, it's a pretty good way for people to find out at the moment, and it shouldn't be denigrated just because to the government now it seems very much 20th century rather than 21st, which is, you know, it's the point they make. They want to drag that sort of system into the 21st century by digitalizing it. Well, it won't suit everybody. In fact, there's quite a large significant percentage of people who would want to involve themselves in the planning system who might be excluded by that. So, you know, how we can replace the notices on lampposts is another matter.
I think it's, I mean, you can understand why, you know, they want to drag you into, you know, sort of the 21st century. But I think they've also got to address that they've still got to, you know, let the general public know what is going on. You know, if there is a major application, and you know, it's and that's the only means how you can guarantee that, you know, people will get to know. Not everybody will know by an app on the phone, because not everybody have got, you know, smartphones.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think you've got to, you know, at the moment, gradually introduce it, but you can't stop the old system. Yeah. Are we straying from your list, Jeff? Or?
Well, I mean, it's impossible to keep to the list because it's such a wide-ranging thing, and there's such a lack of detail.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to sort of list the members' main concerns. I mean, that there's going to be less. They want the public to be, it seems, less involved in the principle of development, more involved in the design and you know, making beautiful places. So, I mean, some views on that would be interesting. Yeah. And I think I've got the message on neighbourhood plans. Well, you know, that you don't want those just turned into design guides. You want the neighbourhood plans still to, I mean, they still will apply, but you know, it seems as if the allocations will be imposed nationally rather than locally. That's the implication in the proposals.
I think another point which was emphasised this afternoon, that the mention of town and parish councils was only mentioned once in both of the white papers. And you know, it felt that you know, we do have quite a big input on planning with, you know, with our local knowledge of you know, town councillors, because we, you know, actually live in the town.
You want that point to be made in the response? Yeah, more acknowledgement of the role of town and parish councils.
I think so. So everybody agree with that? Yeah. Councillor Foreman, I've seen your hand up for a little while.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of issues that I've got with this white paper. One is the design codes that are meant to be coming in. So basically, it's told to developers what bricks to use, what designs kind of things to use, and then they'll be able to put these buildings wherever they want, kind of thing. But it could mean that we have a monotonous amount of houses all looking exactly the same spread throughout. There'll be no difference. Like we've got a diverse range of housing now. These design codes could mean that we've just got one type of house being built, or one type of bungalow. And so I've got quite big concerns with the design codes, that maybe they need to be more open when they're established. And the other thing is with the SIL and the fact it's going to the National Infrastructure Levy. Obviously, at the moment, as a town parish councils, we receive some, but what they're saying in the paper is that your local plan will decide how the money needs to be spent in each area, whether it's a GP surgery or whether it's a school or something. Well, what does that mean for town and parish councils? And I think that they are missing a point there that we should actually clarify with them.
They'll come later in the process as well, because at the moment they're usually due on commencement. They will be due on occupation, which is you know, there's quite a difference there. So money you need to actually to actually create infrastructure is usually needed, you know, earlier the better. Whereas the proposal is that the payments are made, as I say, on first occupation, which could, so there could be a difference of a year, 18 months between, you know, the current due date and the proposed due date. So that's, you know, that's another point to consider.
Councillor Honeyman, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, I did up to a point. I was still interested, you know, like the beautiful spaces. Are you looking things like local green spaces, you know, conservation areas, or what are they really looking for from that? Do we know? Was that too vague?
Yeah, it is a bit.
I mean, could it equate to those sorts of?
The white paper's very vague. It keeps on using the term, but really there's a big emphasis on design all the time. They keep pressing and pressing and pressing, but very little of substance in there. It's just, it seems to be just a buzz phrase, which you know, is designed to sort of throw a good light on the proposals, but to me it doesn't really amount to anything substantial. Just an emphasis on, other than an emphasis on design.
That's good. Thank you.
But as Councillor Borman said, you know, it's complying with the design code is sometimes a disadvantage. You know, you want a bit of variety, you want a bit of diversity, rather than have everything the same character, or, you know, pastiche-y type of thing. You want a bit of modern development mixed in with the, you know, the more traditional development.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look on, where am I looking? I'm looking at the design. I mean, obviously the front cover. I don't know what town. I don't know what seaside town that is, but I mean, they've obviously got a mixture of, yeah, an outskirts of at the edge of the town. But that's a bit of a mixture of development. So that's not all one design anyway. I mean it's well, it's not, is it? When you start going through it,
everything's a mixture. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, most things are. I mean, yeah, a good example of a mixture is that page 15. You see that's a very good. That's not all new housing. That is a mixture of old and new there, but and it's sort of blending quite well. Page 15 on the document. That is the new and the old there with slightly different designs. That's a bit more. That's quite a positive sort of view. But if it was all one design, that would look horrible. But I definitely really think it's, and also we're thinking more separate developments, or are we thinking about the big new developments? That's everything, aren't we? We're looking at.
I should say, yeah.
Anyway, that's enough for me for now.
Councillor Meek.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff, I understand, you know, the centralisation thing. Fine, okay, but it seems to me that that is inevitably going to erode the neighbourhood plans. You say they're going to be taken into account, or that's their intention. I can't but see that what will happen actually is that they're going to be steamrollered by a central initiative that's going to say, well, we need this number of houses in this region, and therefore we're going to override the neighbourhood plan because it's not sufficient for the growth required in this area. So that's a great concern of mine. Yes, I agree with you about pastiche. I mean, there's the Prince Charles syndrome of, you know, you've got to build traditional looking houses because that's what people like. I'm not against modern houses. I'm not against modern designs, but I think they do need to be kind of they need, as you've said, and as Councillor Honeyman has just said, they need to fit in with what's already there. They need to be sympathetic, but also, you know, we shouldn't rule them out just because they're modern looking. You know, we've got to be vibrant and look forward, and there are new materials and new ways of building that we've got to embrace. But also, one of the things that really worries me about this white paper is that although I know you've told me, Jeff, that, you know, modern buildings have to conform to sustainability measures, I don't believe that enough is built into this white paper for the amount of sustainability and resilience that we need to build into it. I mean, you know, I don't see much in this white paper about renewables, about sustainable materials, things like that. And also, you know, if you're going to build a whole new group of buildings, why don't you look at ground source heat pumps and things like that for the whole of the build, so that you have cheap energy? Why are you automatically putting in gas systems? Gas is going to be redundant in 10 or 15 years time. We shouldn't be looking at gas at all. I don't see, we should have directives here which say you've got to be using renewable electricity here. You mustn't automatically assume that you just duct in gas immediately. We've got to look further forward than just the immediate future, I feel. And I don't think that's being taken into account. What I feel we're being given is a build scenario. Let's get things built as quickly as possible without much distant thought for what we would be needing to account for in 15 to 20 years time. Sorry, I went on a bit there.
No, there's some valid points there, which I, totally agree with you. Because when you build a new development, it's the cheapest time to put in these sustainable areas. So with electricity, recycling water, grey water, I think they call it now. This is the time to do it on a new development, and it shouldn't be ignored.
Well, I'm getting an idea of your views on it. There's a couple of there's one area we haven't touched on which is the idea of penalising local authorities who don't meet deadlines on applications, and just speed up the development control process, and the idea that the applicant will get their fee paid back if the decision doesn't come through in time, or that the applicant will be able to have a deemed consent of an application if it, as I say, if it runs over a certain limit. At the moment, obviously, there is incentives for local authorities to deal with applications within the 8-week deadline or the 13-week deadline, depending on what type of application it is. The only sanction really is that the applicant can, if he doesn't get a decision in time, is allowed to appeal, get the appeal process running up as if it's been a deemed refusal. But what the government is proposing are sort of financial penalties, and even the possibility of a scheme being automatically approved, with the possibility that it might be a totally inappropriate development, but it's sort of foisted on the community because of the fact that the local authority didn't determine it in time, which is a bit of a worry for and it's been mentioned in a lot of the responses. So really, should there be a sort of system of penalties? Should the system be beefed up in an attempt to get local authorities to deal with applications within the statutory deadlines? Basically, that's one of the questions.
Yeah, I personally think it's dangerous. I think decisions could be, although you shouldn't do, but it's going to be at the back of your mind that it could cost an authority a lot of money. In some cases it could be thousands if they breach that. Councillor Meek?
Thank you. I mean, I think I do understand that they're wanting to get on with building, and that they see that there's lots of problems with getting planning through. But the trouble is that if you just try and fast track something, then you're doing everything in a rush just to get it through. And I feel that that means that things aren't going to be thought through properly in a holistic way. And I think that's a shame, particularly when we've got a climate crisis to deal with. And okay, we've got a lot of homes that need to be built, but they've got to be built sensibly in the right place. That's another report's been saying recently, that so many of these developments have been built in completely the wrong place, just out of the expediency of getting them built. You know, we've had so many instances of them being built in floodplains, being built where it's inappropriate. And what's happened is that the people who've moved in there have suffered. You know, they haven't been able to get insurance eventually, things like that. And it's terribly simplistic, but when you have a drive on to rush to build things in a hurry, I think you tend to cut corners, and things aren't thought through. I really do feel that these things have to be thought through. Thinking things through take time. And the more you rush it, the less you're going to think through things logically. And that's a big problem I have with this kind of expediency. Sorry, Chair, can I just make another point, bring in something else which concerns me greatly, which I think I did mention to Jeff. There's been talk about this, the affordability housing thing, which now they're talking about affordability, if I'm right, Jeff, you must correct me, will come into play when you build 40 or 50 houses. Then the affordability threshold is at such a level, is it 25% or something like that? But below that, if you're not building 40 or 50, then developers won't have to provide the affordability margin into the development. And I've been reading somewhere that this means that what's going to happen is that developers will think, all right, well, we'll just build 30 houses here, and then we'll make this other area a different development of another 30 houses. So therefore you get round the allocation of affordable houses threshold, and what you'll end up doing is not building any affordable houses. As we know with Newlands, getting the affordability housing in state is quite tricky to do, and you have to really pressurize developers to do that, because they're going to try and avoid it if they possibly can, because that's not such a cost-effective thing for them to do. And we do need affordable housing, particularly in the southeast. You know, our house prices here are enormous. All very well, you could probably find an affordable housing in Blackburn or somewhere, but down in the southeast, for people to get on the ladder is very difficult. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hang on. What's Chair?
Yeah, can you wait your turn, Councillor Lord, because I've got Councillor Borman before you.
What's wrong with Blackburn?
Thank you. Just with regards to the affordable housing, as far as I'm aware, every building development will have to pay this infrastructure levy, and it can be reduced if that development adds affordable housing to it. So yes, they may only need to build 30, but they pay X amount in their infrastructure levy. If they put affordable housing on site, they can then have that reduced of what they pay. That's what we were led to understand at the district training.
I think there's confusion between two different proposals. For the next 18 months, I think, as a temporary boost to small, medium-sized builders, the normal limit or the normal threshold for provision of affordable housing, which is sites for 10 dwellings or more, is going to be relaxed up to about 40. Well, I think that's sort of currently going through at the moment, and it's to give a temporary boost to small and medium-sized builders who have suffered during the lockdown through the slowdown in the building and everything like that. But it's intended only to last for 18 months. It will mean that a lot of sites in the southeast, which tend to be smaller sites, will not have to make any provision for affordable housing, but it is only temporary. Yes, the new infrastructure payments, when they come in, which is liable to be more than 18 months' time, you will be able to offset payments against affordable housing. That's one of the sort of permanent proposals that will be in the bill. this business about raising the threshold for for sites that have to provide affordable housing from 10 to 40 should only last for 18 months. It will greatly affect the provision of affordable housing in the short term. There's no doubt about it. But as I say, it's a temporary boost rather than a permanent proposal. And site split, yeah, they are concerned about site splitting as well. And I think that whereas a site under this new system is obviously being split to try and avoid affordable housing, then there will be measures to sort of avoid that and prevent the applicant or the developer from evading their responsibilities to provide affordable housing by site splitting. But as I say, it's a bit regrettable, really, because it will definitely stop the flow of affordable housing, but it should be only temporary.
Because I think that also there's no mention about like affordable homes or homes for local people.
Not specifically, I don't think, no.
Yeah. I think this is where it lacks detail again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'd suggest through the chairman is that if I bring a lot of the points together and draft something as a sort of summary of a response, a statement of response, usually, the minutes would just go to the chairman for approval. Perhaps in this case, because it's difficult to make resolutions when there's different views, different concerns, and so many different topics and such a wide area of discussion. If I were to draft a statement, response, and circulate it to all members, would that be a better way of doing it? Rather than, well, as I say, the debate there's enough in the white paper to debate it for another couple of hours if you want, but I'm sure you won't want. And there's, so many different topics and so many different views. If I were, as I say, if I were to draft something in the next few days, circulate it early next week, say, once I've shown it to the chairman, and then circulate it to members.
We've got another meeting before you submit.
I think the next meeting is on the deadline day, I think.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's October the 29th. I think that's the deadline day. But I mean, there's plenty of time to agree something.
Yeah.
But not necessarily to go back to the next meeting.
No.
There's
no.
another.
There'd have been a bit more leeway. That's what I was going to suggest.
Well, if I show it to the chairman first, she can comment on it, and then circulate it as a sort of general response.
Yeah, because it is important to.
Yeah, it's a bit too complex and wide-ranging to fit into a sort of a neat set of resolutions in the way. Well, that's what I'd suggest anyway. Is that?
Yeah. If everybody's agreeable to that as well.
Then everyone.
The other thing was what was pointed out this afternoon is that because of the lack of mention of town and parish councils, that we should, send our responses not only, to the government, but also to our local MPs, as well as the local planning authority. I think, it should definitely go to our local MP. She is our representative, so. And that was stressed quite well, as I say, this afternoon. To get our voice heard.
Do you want to? I mean, I suggest the resolution is that the planning officer takes the points made by members on the various topics in the white paper during the debate, and drafts an appropriate response for the agreement, for circulation and agreement by members over the next 2 weeks prior to the 29th of October deadline.
Yeah.
But I'll show it to the chair first and then circulate it. So that's what I would suggest if no members are agreeable.
Yep. So can I, Councillor Hanman?
Can you, yeah, for you, Chair, do you want to give us a deadline for us to comment when you do distribute it to us?
When I send it out, I'll give a deadline. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I'll
a
only
few
need
days, a week, or whatever.
I'll only need a few days before the actual deadline to get the stuff in. I'll have to answer a questionnaire which they put into the consultation, but you know, there's at least 10 days free to consider it in detail before the deadline starts to loom, if you like.
I suppose that, I mean, ultimately, I mean, looking on the other side, I suppose the white paper is trying to say that, trying to speed up development, and that's the idea, that's their bottom line, it seems to be. That's how I sort of read it. Yeah. There we are. It's a bit more. It's a bit. That's a very simplistic view, but that's what they're trying to get to the general public, isn't it? Really?
That's right.
Anyway.
Right. I think we've debated that quite well. So, if we all agreeable to Jeff doing a draft copy, and for us to comment further on it if necessary, before Jeff submits it formally. Okay, show of hands, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Morag. Yeah, that's carried.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Move on to agenda item 6. And the annual review of parking restrictions, and you're recommended to consider the response to East Sussex County Council on the proposed parking restrictions as detailed within the contents of this report. So,
yes, there's four main sites, 4 plans.
Yeah. So we're doing one by one.
Yeah.
We move on to page 12 of your agenda, and this takes in Warwick Road and the Sutton Park Road, and it's basically removal of the existing blue badge bay and moving it to the other end of Warwick Road, and also removal of the ambulance bay, which obviously is not being used now. Anybody, any comments on this, or is the committee agreeable? Councillor Argent?
Yes, I've been through them and watched them, and most of them are all stopping people parking on the corners and blocking the road off.
But we're just dealing with Warwick Road at the moment.
Oh, Warwick Road, yeah, that's you know, for the taking some parking spaces for disabled to get into the library. I think it's a very good idea.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Any other comments? So, Councillor Argent, you propose that we accept these changes.
Yes.
Does that find a seconder? Councillor Borman, and can I have a show of hands, please, if there's no other comments?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's carried.
Thank you.
Unanimously.
And we move on to Shepway Parade. That's by the Co-op in Broad Street. And to propose the change from taxis only at any time. So taxis are only permitted there between 8 AM and 6 PM, which I think makes sense because, you know, parking is desperate in the town. Councillor Borman.
Yeah, I agree. It makes total sense. It helps the shops that are there, that's like the Co-op and Roy's, and the restaurants that are down that end of the town with additional parking, which doesn't need to be taxis at that time of night. So I fully support this.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Edson. And can I have a show of hands of supporting?
That's carried.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Move on to the corner of Broad Street North, Clinton Place and Sutton Park Road. This is basically Tesco's and United Reformed Church.
This is just
Name
junction
now,
protection.
isn't it? Anyway, but a lot of parking, you know, because of people dropping into Tesco's, and it's obviously causing a bit of blind spots there.
Yes, it's junction protection, highway safety.
Yeah. Councillor Honeyman?
Yes, it's a shame. It's a shame we can't really talk about the loading bay in front of the Tesco Express, because obviously that gets used by general members of the public, especially if there's no deliveries, because the deliveries there are at the front as opposed to at the back. Which is just a comment in that sense, but
Yeah.
but that's what they propose. Is it can get a bit blind there, as it's quite a busy junction anyway. So
Yeah.
or crossroads, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm happy to propose that.
Okay, thank you. And does that find a seconder? Councillor Argent. And can I have a show of hands of support?
Thank you.
Thank you. And we move on to the Esplanade and the corners of Martello Road. There again, it's trying to avoid these blind spots.
Yes.
Councillor
I'll-
Argent,
I propose that we accept that one.
thank you. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Edson. And can I have a show of hands of supporting alteration?
Just Horaven, I've not got a problem, but will they be enforced?
Yeah.
Because I'm here about 50 yards away from where you're proposing to do it, and we never see a soul at the weekends. But otherwise, I'm quite in favour of it. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Lord.
Okay.
Right, moving on to agenda item 7. And to receive an update from the planning officer on the proposed footpath diversion order at Tide Mills Railway Crossing and consider response to Network Rail. So we've got 2 recommendations: to note the contents of the report, and 2, to consider a response to Network Rail on the proposed footpath diversion order at Tide Mills Railway Crossing. Okay.
Whoever's doing it, God bless you, because I do footpath diversions and they're an absolute nightmare. So whoever's doing it now, got my full support.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lord. Can you wait till I ask you, because Councillor Edson had his hand up first. Councillor Edson.
Chair, while we were down there, the footfall, the traffic of people coming through that crossing was unbelievable. You know, I mean, obviously with the fine weather and the virus, the people, you know, going down there, it is becoming a dangerous place, I think. And I don't see no reason why we can't support Network Rail. You know, they were quite worried about paths that could easily, they will change.
Thank you, Councillor Edson. Did I see Councillor Meek? Thank you.
Sorry, I'm not quite up with what this proposal is. Could someone just explain briefly to me?
the Network Rail, sorry, can I go ahead?
Yes, certainly.
Network Rail got a policy of replacing what they consider to be dangerous pedestrian crossings with accident records, you know, in the recent past. And this is one of the most well used and well, it's considered to be potentially dangerous crossing in the area. And they put an application last year to South Downs National Park Authority for a footbridge to cross there to replace the pedestrian crossing that's there now. And there was quite a bit of controversy between balancing the safety aspects of having, you know, of doing away with what's considered to be potentially dangerous pedestrian crossing against the environmental impact of the bridge. But in the end, although there were quite a few objections to the bridge, including objection from the town council, the decision was made to balance it in favour of safety, if you like, and the South Downs National Park Authorities Committee agreed to a bridge over the footpath, over the railway. And so the footpath will be diverted over the proposed bridge, which they propose to build next year sometime. And before they do that, they need to have this formal diversion made so that the path follows the track the track on the bridge and over the railway rather than the current directly across the railway. I mean, we were at a meeting with Network Rail for about an hour there. We could see how many people were using it, the difficulties in using the gates, the difficulties for disabled people in using the sort of kissing gates that are there. The kissing gates that are there are intended to stop people sort of rushing over the line. They're, you know, it's intended to sort of delay pedestrians so that they have time to see whether there's a train coming. But we could see there's quite a dangerous bend in the New Haven direction. And when you're standing at the pedestrian crossing and you hear the trains and you're close to the trains going over, it gives you a real idea of how potentially dangerous they are. So really it's to form, you know, I think the die has been cast now with the granting of consent for the bridge, and I don't think there's anything really that can be done, you know, to there's no real complications involved now. This is really a technicality, but Network Rail are aware it's a popular path, so they're carrying out a sort of consultation exercise with all the interested parties before the actual order is made to try and make sure there's no objections to the order which might hold up the construction of the bridge.
Councillor Meek, does that?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to come back on that. I don't know if they've taken into consideration how difficult it would be for people who aren't particularly mobile to get across a bridge. I see quite a few elderly people walking dogs along there. I've walked out a lot myself anyway. I just think, I know there's a kissing gate, so probably disabled access with wheelchairs and things is probably not possible anyway, but there are quite a lot of elderly people take their dogs because it's a nice concrete walkway all the way down to the front there. I just raised that as a kind of just to be taken into account.
I think, like Jeff has said, you know, this has been passed by South Downs National Park. If I remember rightly, it's sort of a zigzag, then over, and then the same down the other side. I'm just trying to visualise the plans. So it would be like a more gentle, it won't be a steep slope, it would be more of a gentle slope as you reach the top.
It's no more than 1 in 20.
Yeah.
And there'll be a slope and then the level as a sort of a refuge or a rest, and then a slope up to the bridge. And it's no more than 1 in 20 gradient, which is sort of deemed to be acceptable.
Yeah. But, you know, I mean, there was quite, you know, as Jeff says, a lot of people were toing and throwing between these kissing gates and the track, and even if you know, like if you've got a child in a pram or a pushchair, by the time you've manoeuvred it round these kissing gates, the train can come zooming past, especially if you don't know the times of the trains, which, you know, visitors obviously don't. So I can see, you know, where Network Rail are coming from to get, you know, more safety there. And I think this is their goal throughout the country. So the only other thing what came up, there is an undesignated footpath which runs along by the railway track between Tide Mills and Bishopstone. And I mean, I've known it and I've walked it for well over 20 years, 30 years plus. And but because it's not a designated footpath, they did, you know, wonder what would happen with that. But I just feel it will naturally take its course on a slightly different route when it reaches the you know, footpath, the main footpath. So I just thought it needs to be mentioned. Any other comments?
Yep.
No. So shall we go? Have you got enough detail, Jeff?
Well, yeah. I mean, presumably you wouldn't have no opposition to a diversion order, taking into account that the, you know, consent for the footbridge has already been approved, you know,
Right.
granted.
So,
Is that okay?
yeah.
Hmm.
So if item 1, so we've all noted the report, yes.
Yes.
So the recommendation 2,
So to inform Network Rail that the Town Council would have no objection in principle to a diversion order, taking into account the fact that the consent for the footbridge has already been granted by the South Downs National Park. Something along those lines?
yeah, that's right. So can I have a proposer and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Meek and Councillor Borman. Thank you. And can I have a show of hands, please?
Right, thank you. Unanimous.
Agenda item 8. To present the revised proposed road closure for Seaford Christmas Magic. So you're recommended to consider the revised road closure application for Seaford Christmas Magic and any comments that we might forward to Lewes District Council. Does it all make sense on what is being proposed of the new route?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is there any comments or any, you know, issues you might have? No?
No.
So we need a proposer that there's no further comment, Jeff?
Yeah, no objections. Yeah.
Yeah, no objections. Thank you, Councillor Argent. And can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Efton. And a show of hands.
That's carried unanimously.
Yeah. And the last agenda item 9, to inform the committee of Lewes District Council decisions, and we're in sync with Lewes District and all the approvals. So if there's no comment, just ask you to note the report.
Okay, thank you.
Noted. Thank you. So that concludes the meeting tonight at 20:45. Thank you, everybody.